Today we are here to talk about the return of Adam Thielen and what that means for the Carolina Panthers. So if you recall, Adam Thielen had the hamstring injury back in week 3 against the Las Vegas Raiders, made a fantastic catch, ends up pulling his hamstring. Everyone knew immediately that he was hurt, and so now he's been out for 7 weeks. He's officially back and activated, which it makes sense. Like, he was at the end of his window. If he doesn't come back, then he's officially placed on IR and out for the year. So you get him, but we're back in the same boat as we've had with a few of the players on the Carolina Panthers that have been on some form of IR or non-football list with Jonathan Brooks, who was injured prior to coming over here. With us going into the bye week, I think it's a good opportunity for Adam. However, I would not be surprised if, hey, we get out here and they decide, as we get into the week and warm things up here leading into Kansas City, really in 2 weeks, they make a decision to possibly sit him one additional game. Now, on the flip side, if Adam Thielen comes out and feels great, like there's no doubt at all that he's going to play, we got to talk about the impact to the current wide receiving core for the Carolina Panthers. So it's going to look a lot different for Adam Thielen than the last time he was out here playing, as we do not have a Deontay Johnson. We do not have a Jonathan Mingo. We do have an Xavier Legette, who is the leading wide receiver in snaps at about 69%. Clearly the number one target there. David Moore is actually second on this list right now, since Jonathan Mingo and Deontay Johnson are no longer here, with about 40% of the snaps. And we'll look at his snap count in a second. It's increased week over week. And then, of course, the third wide receiver in this bunch is Jalen Coker. And that's really your group. So those three, we know we're going to get Adam Thielen. When you talk about who's going to lose snaps, although you may want to point and say it's got to be David Moore, right? Because Jalen Coker has been more productive. Like, David Moore has 2 catches, I think, on the year. I'll pull it up in a second. I don't know that that'll necessarily be the case, but I would expect Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, and Jalen Coker. I mean, they should be your 3 wide receivers that you have for the Carolina Panthers. Now, the other one that I have not really talked about, we talked about him in training camp, is Devin Tompkins. He is another one in this mix, but that's really it. Like, when you look at the receivers that have gotten snaps for the Panthers this year, it's Xavier Legette, Deontay Johnson, Jonathan Mingo, David Moore, Adam Thielen, Devin Tompkins, and that's it. So I wouldn't expect too much change. I just think out of the group, you're going to see fewer snaps. Now, Xavier Legette, we talked about. I mean, this guy went from 59 to 40% to 59% of the snaps, all the way up to 87, 80, 98% of the snaps against the Giants. David Moore, his snap count has also increased. He went from 32% in week 1 to 4%, 25%, 12%. Now all the way back the last 3 weeks in the 80s, and a lot of that has to do with players not being here and with Adam Thielen being injured. He played 83 snap counts, but last week against the Giants, 2 receptions for 21 yards on the season, so not a lot of production there. And of course, Jalen Coker. The wild thing about Jalen Coker is there were 35, I just posted this stat, 35 wide receivers drafted in this year's draft. And he has more receiving yards than all but 7. And out of those 7, one of those is Xavier Legette. It's a pretty good class, and this guy hasn't even played. He's missed a few games. But his snap count is steadily increased. It went from about 50, 65, 50, 68, 45, and then back up to 88%. And I think when we listened to the broadcast back for the New Orleans game, I think he was suffering an injury. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't know how many people are fantasy football players. And if you are, I don't know what to tell you right now if you're kind of looking at this core group of who's going to kind of step up and shine. What I will say, when we talk about the production of Bryce Young, one of the things that's really stood out, at least for me, is without having Deontay Johnson here and for Bryce Young to force the ball to, it does look like Bryce is playing a little bit better. Is he perfect? No. One of the things that drives me crazy with Bryce Young, and I don't really know how to explain it, his drop back isn't really a drop back. It's a little 2 feet shuffle, electric slide, slow motion type thing versus driving back, getting to his point, and then driving through the ball. That's the reason I think he doesn't have velocity, and there's some accuracy issues at times. Still better, and I think not having to find Deontay Johnson on the field is doing him wonders. So there we go, folks. I think it'll be a net positive for the Carolina Panthers in the offense. Not really sure if we get to see him against Kansas City, but I'm excited to have Adam Thielen back, his veteran presence, and hopefully helping these other young guys kind of excel and grow and open up some of the field for them as people try to hone in on Adam. That's going to do it, folks.